anything. Jason and Connie were able to come to the budget workshop, but we just thought before we get, this is what you wanted?
Yeah. Let's go through the same thing, but it goes back a step further.
Okay. So before we get, because we're probably to the point, I think we have two little things to do in the negotiated agreement, but we're definitely to the point where we need to be able to start talking about finances and what next year looks like. And just to make sure that everybody on this team always has the same information, I did ask Jessica to go over some of what she shared with the board, and then we can answer any questions that anybody might have, and then we'll be able to start working on issues.
So I wanted to take this back. I had done a presentation to the board back in February for a budget working session. So I wanted to start with some of the information I presented there, and then include some of the information that I presented at our recent budget work session. So I apologize, this might be information you already have, but I wanted to just go over it to make sure everybody was on the same understanding. So Idaho's funding formula is a salary-based apportionment. Salary-based apportionment is a reimbursement model.
It's not. It says it's not.
It's not, sorry, it's not not a reimbursement model. It uses averages derived from staff and admin career ladder placement. So we have our own salary structure, and then the state has its career ladder. Calculated averages are applied to allocated FTEs that come from our support units. It does not fund on actual FTEs or on an individual staff member basis. So it's not like I could say, if I were a teacher, that the state is giving me X amount of dollars for my position. It doesn't do that. It's an average. The district completes a SBA spreadsheet that utilizes our February support units and our current FTE and career ladder placement. So where our staff, our certificated staff, are on the career ladder placement for the state to multiply against the state approved staff allowance ratios to determine our funding. We had a switch, as most of you know, last year. We shifted back from enrollment to average daily attendance. Average daily attendance is based on actual seat time per student. So if the student's not in a seat for at least 2.5 hours a day, we don't get to count attendance for them. So if they're in the seat for 2.5 hours or 2.5 instructional hours, we would get to count them half day. If they're there for at least 4 instructional hours, we get to count them for the full day. Our midterm support units are what are used to calculate our salary and benefit apportionment, which is the bulk of our state funds. And then our best 28-week support units, which is where the state looks at all of the attendance for the entire school period and takes our best 28 weeks from that. That's used to calculate our discretionary, which is our operational / benefit funding. Protection, if you did watch the February budget work session, we went into that quite a bit. With the shift from ADA, or from enrollment back to ADA, a lot of the Idaho school districts fell into protection related to our support units. So basically, if you fell into protection, if your average daily attendance was below 97% of the prior year's average daily attendance, we fell into that category, along with many, many, many schools. It was an unprecedented number of schools that fell into protection last year. The cost of protection was 4.42% of our FY24 support units. So we have to pay for protection. Whether or not we fall into protection, we have to pay for it in the form of a portion of our support units. I want to just clarify that the normal cost of protection is like 0.5%. So the fact that it was 4.42 was a huge number. And the state, it was just really an unprecedented number across the state for protection. 1, for everybody to fall into it, and 2, for the number to be so high. It's usually not that much.
It's just my bad.
Oh, you're good.
Do you want,
No, I just got a shot today, so it's
using?
Okay, so looking at this current fiscal year, FY24, the budget that was created last year was estimated. The estimated support units for midterm was 225. Best 28 weeks is 221. Best 28 weeks is always usually smaller than our midterm because when you get to midterm, it's just looking at that kind of initial snapshot. By the time the school year's ended, our attendance tends to track down, so we lose support units toward the end of the year.
And when they say midterm, it's actually the first 10 weeks of school.
Yeah,
so it's not semester time. It's the first Friday of November is how they determine our midterm support units. So
based on that information, our FY23 midterm support units were 240.8. 97% of that would be 232.78. Our FY24 midterm support units were 220.19. So obviously the 97% of FY23 is higher than what our midterm for FY24 was, so we would use that 232 number. The cost of protection of the midterm support units was 10.28, which brings us to the 222.5. So again, the budget was built on the assumption that we were going to have 225 midterm support units. We only had 222.5 based on protection. So we actually had a budget shortfall in funding this year because of that protection.
Is that cost of protection, is that paid as a tax once you get the funds? Do they take it out of those funds, or do you pay into that all?
So the state funds us in multiple chunks. Our first chunk comes in November, and we just get kind of a chunk of money. And then in February,
per enrollment.
Yeah.
For enrollment.
For our average daily attendance.
Right.
So and our support units. So it all calculates together.
Okay.
In February is when they determine where we really truly kind of are for that midterm support unit number. So in February, they true up the numbers and they give us more of the money in February. We'll receive another allocation in May, and then we'll receive our final allocation in July once the best 28 weeks is done being calculated. So they kind of fund you up front, a good chunk of it, and then they true it up as they go along. So we don't technically ever pay it back because they never give us everything up front in the first place.
Okay.
So they take it.
So they make the adjustments.
They make the adjustment,
but it averages out to.
Mm-hmm. And they increase or decrease depending on where we're at. So like I said, we did have a shortfall this year because we budgeted at 225. We're ending at 222.5 for our midterm support units. That ended up being, I was estimating it to be about a $15,000 shortfall in revenue for our salary-based apportionment. It ended up only being about $196,000. So we came out a little bit to the good there. And then there's some other information that I can share with you after that. So Idaho's funding formula for salary-based apportionment comes from Idaho Code 33-1004, and it establishes staff allowance ratios. So we are split into 4 categories. We have our administrative staff that are certificated, so superintendent, principal, special education directors. We have our instructional staff, our certificated teachers, our pupil services staff, which are your counselors, school nurses, school psychologists, SLPs, and then our classified non-certificated staff. So that would be business manager, instructional arts, office support, custodial, IT, basically all of our classified positions. They fall into that. So the state in statute has allowance ratios that we're allowed to have for each of those buckets of employees. They take that support unit number and they multiply it by these ratios to give us what they're going to fund us on based on the weighted average. So to make this make sense, we're going to look at it here. This was the information that was presented in February. We had the state allowance ratio multiplied by the support units that we were allowed, the midterm support units, to give us what the state allows. So if we look at instructional staff, we have 1.02, which is state statute ratio, multiplied by our support units to give us 227.1725 of FTE. We actually, at that point in time, had 262. So we are over by 34.8 instructional staff based on a weighted average. You can also see that we're quite a bit over on classified staff. This says that we have 309 classified staff. We actually have more than that. When you look at FTEs and you have you have 2 individuals that are both half-time positions, you add them together to create 1 full-time position, so that's 1 FTE. So this is our equivalent. So we do have more than 309 classified staff, just based on how all of the percent FTEs add together. Coming into next year, we're estimating based on our attendance this year and our projected decline in enrollment that we're only going to have 215 support units. So that's a decrease of 7.5 from this current fiscal year. So again, that just makes our ratios a little bit more out of whack, projecting on where we're at.
So do we think that number 262 is going to be the same?
So that's the thing. Right now, I'm at, if I would pull all the certificated contracts, I ended up having 271 for when I was looking at it in May, and so that's part of the conversation. We have some current open vacancies from retirements and people that are not returning, and so that's part of the conversation of, do we hire those positions back or do we kind of freeze them to help the budget overall?
So our number right now is 271.
271, yeah. All right, so then I apologize for how small this is. I wonder.
And to clarify, that's 271 paid by the general fund, not
Right.
federal.
Because we have a title and special.
Yeah.
And I can share this out with you guys because I apologize, this is super small. This SBA calculation, this spreadsheet is really, really, it's a large spreadsheet. If you had the packet, I think I gave Jason some extras.
Yeah, we each have a packet.
Yeah, so if you have the packet, it's in the packet that I shared. So if you're looking at the supplemental handout, page 4, I think it is, from the budget work session, you'll see it a little bit better than you can see it on the screen right now. So this calculation is the FDA calculation. So essentially, the state's career ladder has its placements. So you have R1 through 3, P1 through 5, and then AP1 through 5. AP5 coming online just this next fiscal year for FY25. We basically took all of our current certificated staff in the general fund and we placed them on the state's career ladder based on where the state says that they are on the career ladder. We did take into account that we are going to have some retirements and resignations, and so those people, instead of being maybe AP3, AP4, AP5, they're now going to be, if we replace them, at an R1. So I apologize again for the small writing, but let's look at AP5. The box on the left is based on state statute. So this is where the state's career ladder is based on state statute. The state also gave us the 6359 last year. They didn't adjust the state statute to include that money in the career ladder. So it's been allocated again, but it's not part of the career ladder, so we have to have kind of 2 separate presentations and we have to report on it separately. They're not giving us an additional 6359 last year. It's still the same money that they gave us last year. They just allocated again and we still have to do separate reporting for it because they didn't update the language in the statute.
Are there any strings to that money, or?
It's still used for salaries.
It's the same money we got last year.
Yeah.
It's just a continuation of it because we allocated it last year and gave everybody those big raises. Yeah. If they hadn't done that, we would be in a really bad place because 6359 times however many units we had last year,
well, you can see
we wouldn't have this year.
You can see the difference. So on the left hand side, if the 6359 were not factored in, the total amount that the state career ladder would give us for our 271 FTE would be 14.3 million. With the 6359, for the same 271 FTE, it's 16 million. So it's a significant difference. That 6359 infusion into the career ladder is a significant amount of money. So they take all of that, they multiply. So AP5, we're saying we're going to have 64 people at AP5 next year. The 69,359 is what's on the 6359 career ladder. You multiply that out, that's 4.48 or $4.4 million for those 64 FTE. However, they take all of our FTE, multiply it by the state's career ladder, that gives us a subtotal. Then we tell them how many certificated staff have their BA plus 24 and their MA. That calculates in, so that's $280,555. That's added to that $16 million number. We also have OS certificates, which are our CTE professionals that have additional certifications. We get $17,490. That is carried over and added in. So altogether, salaries plus allocations, we're at $16.3 million. That's divided by the 271 FTE that is on this sheet to give us an average salary of $60,336 per support unit. Not per FTE, but per support unit. So those 215 support units multiplied by the 1.02, the staff allowance ratio, times the 60,000 is what we get for certificated instructional staff. The next page is pupil services. It goes through the same thing. We have 28 pupil services staff. We get their total salaries plus their MABA allowances to get an average salary for our pupil services staff of $61,280. The next one is admin index. This is one is a little bit different. Basically, our administrators are placed on the admin index based on their qualifying FTE placement. So how many years they've been an admin, what level of education they have, that places them on this matrix and gives us an admin factor. So our admin index factor for the FY25 would be 1.65361, but 1.65 for all intents and purposes. The next part I broke out a little bit to try and make it easier, but again, it's small, because it is a large spreadsheet and getting it onto one thing is difficult. So this information that we did on the prior 3 tabs carries forward to this part of the spreadsheet. So our district information on the upper right hand side of the spreadsheet where it says district information admin staff index, that 1.65 comes forward. Our midterm support units is on here. We're estimating at 215. And then on the left hand side, where you kind of get into the nuts and bolts of it, you have the staff allowance ratio. You notice that the staff allowance ratio matches what's in state statute. So again, looking at instructional, they're giving us 1.021 of the 215 midterm support units. So that ends up being 219.5 midterm support units for instructional staff. We're saying we have 271. So 219 versus 271. You take that 219.51, you multiply it by the average salary that came from the instructional tab, that's $60,336.10. That includes your MA, BA, and that includes your APE, all of that. We're getting on average for our 219.51 support units, $60,336 each for the weighted average. So we have 13.2 million that is coming through for instructional. You do the same thing with our admin index and pupil services, and then down below on the next portion of the spreadsheet, you'll see where the non-certificated comes in. So altogether, based on the state staff allowance ratios multiplied by our support units and multiplied by the average salary, we're getting $18.6 million for our salary-based apportionment for the salary portion. If you look at our actual salaries, now this is based on FY24 numbers, actual salaries for these individuals, we're at 27 million. So there is a significant gap between what we're receiving.
What was the second number?
The 27 million,
27,
that's for, if nothing changed, if we left everything exactly the same, that's exactly what we're anticipating to pay out this fiscal year. The other important piece of information from this is that total benefit apportionment. So that's where the state's giving us funds towards benefits. So for this year, we're looking at 18.6 for salary for FY25, and then 3.9 million for total benefit apportionment.
And those benefits are not your medical benefits, right?
Right.
Those are the employer side of PERS, employer side of FICA. Those are the mandatory benefits that the district has to pay on your behalf.
And there's a little, if you look at the top of part 1, essentially up here in this little tiny writing here, these blue numbers here, it's PERSI plus FICA employer rate for certificated staff and resource officers, and then we get PERSI plus FICA rate for all other non-certificated staff. So they have a percentage that they're essentially giving us for our calculated support units FTEs.
So again, that's for the 219.5, not the 271.
Correct. Right. Okay, so moving on, the next part that we do is we take all of that information and we basically have to prove out to the state that we're not crazy in how we're estimating our revenues for next year. So this, you'll see this document itself in our budget presentation. It's a required document to be submitted to the state, and it's a required document for our budget hearing. So this information, if you look at section 4, is everything that we just went through on that salary-based apportionment spreadsheet. It plugs into this document. So you'll see that we have 215 support units, 1.65 for the admin index, our average instructional and pupil salaries to get to that 18.6 number. The benefit apportionment also carries through. Transportation allowance comes through on here as well. So our transportation allowance is kind of a fun thing. We basically complete reporting every year, and then the state is always kind of a year behind in what they give us. So we had budgeted $1.5 million for transportation because that was what we received last year. But this year they gave us 1.7 because we're always kind of a year behind. So next year we'll budget 1.7 for transportation revenue because that's what we received this year. So we're always a little bit behind. And it can go both ways. If for some reason we buy a whole bunch of buses, say we replace our entire fleet one year, I would not budget to have that much revenue the following year because we're not going to replace that many buses the following year. So I would anticipate we would have a decrease in funding.
So the 309 or however many classified staff that she showed that we employ doesn't include our transportation staff, because transportation staff, for the most part, not fully, but for the most part, is paid out of that transportation allowance.
So when we're looking at those classified numbers, they're not included.
I did not
in those
include them
numbers?
in there. No.
Because those are general fund paid, and this is in general fund, but it's
kind of its own separate
Right.
beast of a thing. The other important thing on this is that best 28 weeks support units. So again, we always kind of calculate that to be down a little bit and calculate it at 214, and that's multiplied by the state distribution factor. So the state breaks the distribution factor into two parts. One is for health insurance, and so that portion, and you guys should have that number on the bottom of your sheet, but I had to crop this enough so I didn't have it on mine. But in the very small writing on the bottom of your packet, it'll say, I think it's 21,000 some odd change is for health. And that is to pay for basically the $825 that we offer to benefit employees to cover their health insurance, dental, and vision. So we use that to help offset the amount that we're chipping in on behalf of the employee to help reduce the cost of those medical benefits. The other portion of it, I think it's 23,000 and some change, that is discretionary funds, and so that can be used for salaries, operations, whatever we need it to. So that 43,622 multiplied by the best 28 weeks would give us an additional $9.3 million in state revenue. So the state has, essentially we get our salaries based apportionment, we get our discretionary funding, we get transportation funding, and then on top of that we get special payments, and I can walk through that on our FY25 document.
What was the difference between what we were allocated in 2023 for salary versus what we paid? So not last year, not
I would
this year.
have to go pull that. I didn't bring that with me.
Was it significantly different than this?
I would have to go pull that.
Okay.
Okay. Lisa, did you have the other?
Jessica, how much does, like, because we have 271 versus that lower allocation number, how much do you think that messes with our weighted average?
It's quite a bit. And the other thing that's tricky, that's what I was looking for. The other thing that's tricky is as we start losing veteran staff because they're joyfully retiring, because they're getting to that point in their life that they're able to retire. As we lose those veteran staff, we are replacing them at a lower level. So that really throws off our average. So for every AP5 staff member that we lose, we're replacing it at a R1, and that R1 is significantly lower in what the state gives us to calculate our weighted average, essentially.
Right.
So
Mostly because of ADA. and that kind of stuff.
yeah. All right, so the other thing that I presented at the budget work session last week, was that last Tuesday? It's all rolling together, was basically where I anticipate we're going to be this year. So like I said, we get special payments, our foundation payment, and then miscellaneous revenues. We're budgeting, I wouldn't say flat, because we're budgeting a little bit less in our foundation payments, and that's based on a decline in enrollment and a decline in seat time, so that average daily attendance. We are going to get something for content and curriculum, but the state statute changed this year, and so they haven't determined quite how they're going to send that out. It's going to be different than they did it in the past, but I'm anticipating we will receive some content and curriculum money. You can see that last year, the difference between what I'm estimating for FY25 and what we received last year, I'm estimating that will be about $53,000 short in our special payments. Moving on to our foundation payment, which again is that discretionary funding salary-based apportionment, benefit apportionment, and the transportation, which is a reimbursement basis, we're actually coming out a little bit ahead, and that's mainly due to the transportation piece. So even though we are declining in support units, we are getting a little bit more in our discretionary, a little bit less in salary-based apportionment, and a little bit more benefit apportionment. I want to put the caveat on here that the budgeted numbers are actually more than what we received for FY24. Remember, I told you because of the protection on our support units, we came in about $196,000 less on revenue. So keep that in mind, that even though this is what we budgeted for FY24 in that column, we actually came in a little bit less because of that change. So we're budgeting to have new revenues from our state foundation payments, about $345,000. Miscellaneous local revenues, we're budgeting flat. Our supplemental levy is set for next year. Investment earnings, we actually had an increase on investment earnings this year, more than we anticipated. However, with next year being an election year and not sure what the markets are going to do, we're going to continue to budget that flat. And if it comes in above that, that's fantastic. Tort is a part of our levy. It helps pay for our liability insurance, essentially. We can do a 3% increase on that each year. It's very, very minimal what we can actually increase it on, because they have to take our revenue lieu against that. So even though we budget at $182,500, we actually receive about $120,000 of that, because we get some other revenue from property taxes in lieu of getting the full tort. We get it all, but we don't at the same time. Transfers are mainly our whenever we take like athletic trips or field trips or something like that, that revenue comes into the general fund because we can't charge that to transportation. Transportation can't pay for that. So when we send you guys those trip reports at the building level, that revenue that's coming from those trip reports is going into those transfers to basically offset the transportation budget for things that they can't charge to their budget. Other local revenue, this is E-rate reimbursements, Chromebook fees, and just other local revenue. Our facility use rental does not fall into this. That's in a separate fund. So this is just general fund only. So we're anticipating that to be flat. So total new but general fund revenues would be $291,000. We did have some overspending last year. Some of it we knew was going to happen. Special education programs was over, as well as our special education preschool. We didn't budget enough money for a special education preschool. So if you're looking at the monthly financial reports, you'll see that our special education preschool had a budget of maybe like $30,000, and it definitely costs more than that for the salaries to run the preschool. So we know we need to fix the budget for that. Special education programs, we're actually over quite a bit more than the 627, but I'll explain why I'm only saying 627 here in just a second. Interscholastic programs, we had budgeted in our levy for $1.3 million. We're projecting to be over that. We're going to be about 1.4 and some change. So we're over budget in our interscholastic program based on what we had levied for. Same thing with our safety and security program. We were over in that budget as well. So it's just things that we need to take into account that we need to fix in our budget in order to make sure that all the buckets are correct. So with that information, taking the new general fund revenues and then taking these additional costs, we are basically projecting a shortfall of $795,000 based on that information. The next part of that you have to take into account is the things that we know are coming into the budget that we don't really have control over, but are a kind of a set cost. So we know our liability insurance is going to increase. The content coverage that we had for our buildings was too low based on the square footage and based on the inflation. So we did have to increase our content coverage. I'm projecting it to be $45,000. Any day now we should get something from iCrimp that tells me what our actual charge is going to be next year, and I'm hoping it comes in less and not more, but I'm projecting $45,000 for that increase on our liability insurance. The state insurance fund increase, that's our workers' comp. So workers' comp had a 13% increase last year. And talking with Brooke about it, our HR director, we both agreed that we think it's going to be pretty similar this year, based on across the board what's happening in the state. So we projected that 13% increase to be $54,000.
We'll know the answer to that tomorrow.
Yay, more information that will make this easier. And then the last thing that is happening is Percy rates are increasing. So the employee portion of Percy is increasing across the board. So we had to factor that in. So that Percy rate increase would be an additional $231,000. So those set costs that we are committed to having to spend are $330,000 added to the $795. We're looking at a total budget shortfall for next year of $1.1 million. Now that is projecting everything exactly as it is this year. That is not including steps, cell movement, increase in APE, anything like that. That is just where we're at. If we were to give everybody a cell movement and left everything the same, that would be an additional, we would have to be at 1.8 million of a budget shortfall if we left everything exactly the same as it is this year with just a cell movement for everybody, except for our superintendent.
Who doesn't? I'm not getting more, I'm not getting anything, which is fine.
So that is essentially kind of in a nutshell some of the information that I presented at multiple budget work sessions since February. This recent docket in the packet that you guys have with you is what was presented last week. So yes, we're looking at having to do a $1.8 million cut to the budget in order to balance next fiscal year.
Adjustment.
A budget adjustment, there we go.
Unless we get a lot of kids coming our way.
Yeah.
And so far that is not happening.
We can get
We're trying to
enrollment
get
up.
people to register.
There is one other thing that I can point out in the packet, that is the estimated general fund. If you flip to the back of that, I just want to go over the estimated ending fund balance. So the very last page, you'll see revenues and expenses. We were overexpended this year. We had budgeted to expend $45 million and we ended up expending 47 based on where we're estimating the year to end. So that's eating into general fund balance. There's some things that are playing into our favor that are going to help that general fund balance. For example, we know that we have K-3 literacy money that we need to transfer. We can transfer essentially $389,000 of expenses from the general fund against that K-3 literacy. So that puts money back into the general fund essentially. Same thing for Medicaid reimbursements. We're expecting, I think I had $450,000 of Medicaid reimbursements on there. We're anticipating that we'll be able to move some of our special education expenses out. So special ed, even though I said it was overspent on this packet and I was budgeting at 627 on this one, that 450 is essentially the difference on that overspend, is we know that we'll be able to move some of those special education expenses out because of the Medicaid reimbursement. The other thing that is saving our bacon right now, with the shift from enrollment to ADA, so enrollment to average daily attendance, the state essentially had $105 million that they couldn't give to schools because of the shift in funding. They got a one-time approval to basically give that to us as a one-time supplemental discretionary funding. So that $1.4 million that you see on there is one-time funding based on the shift from enrollment to ADA that is going to the schools to help offset the cost for this fiscal year. There's no guarantees that's going to happen next year. There's just no guarantees that that's going to happen. They're working on a weighted per student average that would actually help with special education funding and all sorts of stuff. They could not get that through the legislature this year. It died before it got anywhere. They couldn't get it through. The Superintendent Critchfield is very adamant that that's going to be her push list next year, is to try and help get that money that's already been allocated in the K-12 education budget back out to the schools. We have no guarantees that's going to happen, so we can't add that into our budget because that would not be fiscally responsible. So that 1.4 million is basically offsetting our overspend on the general fund this year, and we're projecting to end the year at $4.4 million in general fund fund balance, we started the year at $4.5 million. So we basically ate into fund balance by $100,000 if all of this comes through the way we're anticipating expenses to flow through. That 4.4 million, if you're looking at what our ratio is for fund balance ratio, it's 9.33%. So our board policy says that we will stay above 8% of our fund balance, so that we have funds to operate in case something catastrophic happens and the state can't give us money. We can actually meet our obligations and pay our bills. So we're at 9.33 right now. We should not go below 8%. Do you have any questions on any of the information?
One of the things Jessica's doing with the budget that I appreciate that is different than the way Brian budgeted is she's looking at what was spent in those different categories and then actually adjusting the budget to fill the need that is there, because we have overspent in special education. If you go back over the last at least 5 or 6 years, every year almost $1 million in special education. So Jessica is saying if we know that's what we're spending, then we need to budget what we're spending instead of throwing some number in there and hoping that we're not too far off. So she's being very intentional and has been all year long. Each department, each building, they have their overall allocation, but then they have little buckets of like purchase services, instructional materials, and she's been really clear with them. I need you to spend from the bucket that is appropriate for what you're buying, and if that bucket is empty, as long as your overall is still in the black, then you need to purchase from that right bucket so that she can make sure that the allocations are appropriate moving forward.
That's especially important for our building budgets. So if you have instructional, we basically allocate our building budgets based on a dollar amount per enrolled student. So if I'm giving $40 for instructional materials for each enrolled student, then if you're not spending your instructional materials budget, if you overspend it and then you put it into your field trips instead of instructional materials, I'm going to think you're going to need more field trip money. I'm not going to realize that we maybe need to decrease field trip money and then we need to increase what we're giving you for instructional materials.
Yeah, and then you're not able to accurately
Right.
budget.
Right.
Exactly. So that's really what I'm focusing on, is trying to make sure that expenses are hitting the right spot so that we are giving you guys everything that you need to be successful at the building level as well.
So one of the things that I think was, for me, illuminating was that weighted average, and Brian's talked about the weighted average for several years, but I just never understood it in the way that I am understanding it now from Jessica. So the weighted average for our certified staff is $60,000, but they're only giving it to us for 219 staff, not 271. So when you do the math, we're actually getting $48,000 per certified person, which is step 1 on our salary schedule. And that's no additional stipends, that's none of that, because that is all rolled into that weighted average. So that's becoming a little bit problematic.
If you look at that scattergram that's on the very back of that supplemental packet, I apologize I didn't get a chance to throw it into the presentation I had tonight, but that scattergram at the back, that's this year's, based on this year's information. So that looks at our salary matrix and where all of our certificated staff are placing on that salary matrix. So we're paying out all of those funds, plus we're paying out MABA stipends, plus we're paying out APE stipends. And I just want you to realize that we're not receiving additional buckets of money for each one of those things. The money that we are receiving to fund all of that is coming directly from that salary-based apportionment, which is that $60,336 number. Any additional above and beyond that is either coming from discretionary funds or a supplemental levy, or in our instance, fund balance. We are very top-heavy in salaries. I think I had it at 92% of our budget was salaries and benefits. 92%.
Yeah, that's high.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it should be 86 to 87.
If you got it down around 85%, you can live with it. But
Mm-hmm.
Well, yeah, we've been saying this forever, that, I mean, we love our teachers, and
Mhm.
we love what our district is doing, but we're paying for too many teachers that we're not getting reimbursed for.
There's that, and then we have, I mean, there's so many factors that are playing into it. You have the decline in enrollment, which is affecting our salary-based apportionment because it affects our support units. You have the ESSER cliff. We all had some great couple years with ESSER funding from we just had a lot of extra money that allowed us to do some extra things. But with the decline in enrollment and the ESSER cliff, and then losing veteran teachers, which is good for them to retire, but it's all impacting where we're at.
And we're getting to a really big cliff with regard to veteran staff. We have a lot of veteran staff who in the next 2 to 3 years will be retiring, and if we lose them and bring on a lot of new teachers, 3 to 5 years of experience, that means our weighted average is going to go even further down. So we had this information. We wanted to make sure everybody on the team has it, because as we start talking about what we do with IBB this year, this all has to play into that conversation. So can we start with just finishing up the negotiated agreement?
Yeah, before we do that, you had sent out an email earlier to all staff about your discussions with leadership team and principal or admin. You talked about making budget cuts through them. Are any of those cuts coming out of the negotiated agreement?
I don't think so. I don't think
I was
so.
just wondering, it was just,
Yeah,
people have been inundating me with, well, what's going on? Lisa's basically giving us an offer package right here in this email saying that we're going to.
Nope, part of that, like the very first item on our thing is we've got 12 open positions. If we don't fill them, that's $960,000 roughly of the 1.8, 1.9 that we need to try to find, just to be able to give steps.
Yeah.
That's nothing else. That's just a step for everybody.
I just wanted to make it.
Yeah, no, I'm not talking. No, we're not doing. Nothing about. No, but the board has to make some decisions about how we have to have a balanced budget, and when we're talking about having to cut almost $2 million from what we spent this year to what we're going to spend next year, we have to bring recommendations to the board. So it's not anything in the that's in the negotiated agreement at this point in time, because we recognize we still have IBB we've got to take care of. But we just looked at different positions, different classified positions, contracted services, and administrative positions. We looked at lots of different things.
So then, to me, wouldn't that then affect our negotiations or our interest-based bargaining?
not necessarily.
I don't see how, because if you're gonna save money to get it where it needs to be, I don't know, I feel like I understand anything out of the NA, that's none of our, I mean, that's your your job. Yeah, I don't know.
Well, we didn't touch extracurricular salaries or any of those kinds of things.
The main things that we're looking at are things that, I mean, we have open positions. That's an easy one. If we cannot replace those open positions, that's very, very easy.
Yeah.
I don't think there's an appetite to do any other adjustments. There's some classified things that we're looking at potentially, but there's everything else we're looking at has to do with shifts or changing how we're staffing from a classified perspective, or looking at contracted services where can we cut potentially there, what operational things that we can do.
I feel like most of the conversation today was wanting to have an understanding of the impact if there was a cut, the impact at the building level. So if this position were to go, then what would that look like from the logistical? And we honestly, there's nothing set in stone because it's just like, here's some different ideas, but it was really just trying to get an understanding of, okay, if this happened, what's the cause and effect of this? If we chose to do this, what would this be? If we chose to do this kind of a thing. And then we asked principals to brainstorm within their groups, like, are there some things that you could live without? I mean, that was, I don't feel like any decisions were made. It was just, here's different ideas so that, because she legally has to do a balanced budget, and so then what are some things that we could present to the board, with the idea that we were never talking about a RIF situation,
Right.
we were never talking about, so I mean, it was, that was kind of.
We talked about 271 teachers paid out of the general fund. What's the salaries paid out of the levy?
Well, the levy goes into the general fund, so it's basically
Covering the
covering
difference.
the difference.
Plus. It's covering the difference plus, because if we wouldn't have received the 1.4 million from the state this year, we would have eaten into the fund balance.
Well, if we wouldn't have spent $2 million over what we had, we wouldn't have to use that.
Right, but that's special education, which is why Jessica needs to put the budget together in a way that Brian's never done before. We're actually budgeting for what we have to spend, and special education is an unfunded mandate. We get kids who have needs. We are required to, whatever their IEP says when they come to us, that's what we have to provide until we can have the data to show that we can make a shift. But we have so many
The other thing that, I mean, honestly really killed us this year is we could not find services, and so I think at one point, and don't quote me on this, we had 4 or 5 contracted services, which we've never had that many before because we literally could not hire. We just couldn't find them, like there weren't qualified people, so we had to, so that was like triple what we would because they were contracted. This year she was able to actually hire, or going into next year she was actually able to hire, so we don't have to do that. So that was a huge amount, but I mean, and
that's just 2. She's got not 2,
but it
still
saves
has 3.
quite a bit of money, those contracted services. But that's, you know, that was one of the things we brainstormed, like, can you absorb some of that? So instead of having an SOP signed to every building, if we can't cover that, are there some options instead of doing contracts? Like, what we tried to get out of the box and just brainstorm what that would be because contracts are so expensive. But that's a state problem. Everybody's doing across the state is having to do contracted services. There aren't any SLPs, there are not OTs, you can't find PT. I mean, some districts are struggling with just finding special ed teachers, so, and they, you know, the contracted services are just killing us.
One of the things that happened, Bill, is, for example, Brian put for preschool $4,000 for benefits and a very little bit for salaries. We have 2 full-time people, teachers, plus we have paras in there, and so he didn't put what we actually employed in that area. So when you look at it, we're overspent. For the gate position, he just put benefits, no salary, and he did that throughout the budget. So
there's no summer school money budgeted.
Yeah, so when you start looking at that, it looks like we've overspent because he didn't budget what he knew we were going to spend. We should have had this conversation last year and we didn't. So she's trying to shore it up.
Wondering where, and this with all due respect, but where that shortfall, how was that missed by so many people?
Well,
my guess is when he was doing the preschool, then he was probably basing it off of what the state was recommending on what we hire.
So in the general fund, I mean,
this is what we.
So that's what we're
him.
held to. So in the general fund, as long as our general fund, we report to the state based on what we spent, but as long as the general fund overall isn't overspent, you're fine. So what I'm trying to do is clean up the buckets, cause we do have a report in our audit that
Yeah.
says, hey, this is where you overspent. Well, yeah, we overspent.
Well, I
because we
guess
didn't
that's
put a
what I'm
budget
trying to
there.
get at, cause we were audited, the
Yeah.
audit came back
If you
great.
look back in our audits, you'll see
And-
it.
Well, when he says it's great, what he's looking at is, do you have all the internal controls in place so that you are making sure that money is, everybody knows where the money is going? So that was clean, but he did identify for us that
Yeah.
we're overspending in certain places because it wasn't right.
So I guess the oversight was right at the end when he was preparing the budget for this school year. That's how it got overlooked as far as,
Well,
because
because
we had
when-
nothing to go on.
Right, because when Jessica presented Brian's budget, she used the state paperwork, which is this, because that's all she had, and she was struggling.
The other thing that was an issue with last year is we did have an overspend. We ate into fund balance last year that wasn't factored into the budget. So if you look at that estimating
Which
general
we
fund,
knew, remember at the beginning of the year.
the
there was $2 million.
estimated general fund one, you'll see that the budget was written to have a fund balance of like 6.2 million. $6.2 million. We started the year with 4.5. So we had a huge overspend last year.
Right.
That
A year
carried
ago, a
forward.
year ago.
Yeah. So not this current fiscal year, but FY23, right when I first started, and I'm looking at everything and I'm going, but what happened at the 6.2 we were supposed to have, we had 4.5. So we started in the whole 28% down on the revenue. Are you looking for the audit?
No, I'm looking for I guess I need to go in the board book. I just wanna show, like, this is how the board, and you guys, those of you who have watched the board meetings have seen the frustration from board members feeling like they're not getting their questions answered. So when you look at, I'll just go to the,
So basically then, and Bob, you could probably answer this, so when Brian would come to the board meetings once a month, because he had to present, do a financial once a month, right? To the board. So when he would come to that, he wouldn't list the special ed stuff, or he wouldn't list it, or so you guys had no clue.
We
that-
never really knew where and what the shortfall amounted to. At the end of last year, we knew we
Yeah.
were $2 million in the hole going into this year
Yeah.
because of the shortfall in the fund balance. So that right away was a big red flag.
Right.
And we had some discussions early on about whether to even amend the budget in order to try to make appropriate adjustments for that. We opted not to do that because we felt like we had enough fund balance that, given no catastrophic occurrence, we would make it through the year.
Right.
And which we have done, but still, as we went through this year, in all honesty, there are some places in looking at what we now have in the way of information that we let spending get away from us.
Yeah.
We really did.
That's what I was saying, it seems like the checks and balances kind
Yeah.
of failed a little bit.
But
Well, I
I can
just
tell
wanna
you
show
that,
you-
with Jessica's help now,
Yeah.
the board has a much better understanding and a much better ability to actually see those numbers month by month in the
Yeah.
reporting that she's giving us, which is very similar to that year-end report that you have in your packet.
Right, makes sense.
Yeah.
February 13th.
regular board meeting. Okay, I just wanna show you so you do know that we are really trying to improve this. So this was this is how Brian presented the budget to the board. It was just this one, I guess 2 sheets right here. And he focused down here a lot on, last year at this time, our fund balance was this percent, and we're here, so we're close, and that's what he focused on. And the board asked questions, but there was no information here. So this is how Jessica is presenting the budget. So she's got the revenues and expenditures,
Then it's broken out by
and
fund
then it's broken out by funds. So,
at a detailed level.
right, so they can see what percentage we're spending. So when you look at, like this one right here, where I just saw gifted and talented. So this is what he,
The budget was the 78.
salaries, so he under budgeted here, or over budgeted, we're actually doing well here, but then he under budgeted for the benefits.
And you said that was because he did put in the salary of the teacher?
Yeah, so summer school would be a great example. So
Right
there's
here.
no budget except for a little bit of benefits, but we obviously have expenditures there. Special education preschool is another one where there's a budget for salaries and benefits, but it's very minimal to the actual expenditures. So this is as of March 31st too, this report that you guys are looking at. This is the expenditures through March 31st. It gets worse because in April we accrued for July and August because those contracts that go through August, we have to accrue them back to this fiscal year because they're technically an expense of this fiscal year. So that's where we really start to see the overspend in some of the other areas. That estimating general fund packet that I gave you had me basically, it had the accruals in there, and then I estimated what our May and June expenditures were going to be, and so that's how we got to that number for that final fund balance number, the estimated final fund balance number for this year. But I basically have gone through and broken it out at a detailed level for each line item in the general fund, and then also all the other funds that we have, because we have multiple other funds that we operate out of. Our title grants are out of different funds, base program operates out of its own fund, things like that. Food service is a self-supporting entity within its own fund. So just trying to give them a full financial picture that's a little bit more detailed.
Yeah. So
Brian, I'd like to go back to your original question
Jason.
for a minute, yeah.
you said you called him Brian.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry. At any rate, your question was the savings that, our administrative staff are attempting to generate through brainstorming.
Yeah.
Whether or not that would impact the negotiations. And the reason I said not necessarily is because as I look at this, and I'm only one board member, but as I look at this, we have some areas where we have tended to overexpend. We'll get those under control going forward. And that's part of what the job of the administration is trying to do, is to rope that in.
Yeah.
So that, we don't have that going forward. But the amount of savings to be generated into next year's budget will probably not come close to wiping out that $1 million shortfall.
Yeah, and you won't truly see that till next year anyway,
Yeah.
after it's over, to see how much you really save.
But we're going to be, honestly, I have some plans in place for internal controls to be watching that, looking at adding positions. If a position is going to be added, does it actually have a positive impact on our enrollment and our average daily attendance? If it doesn't, we can't hire somebody.
Yeah.
I mean, that's special education is special education. If we're required to hire it, we have to do it for that. But at any other position, we're really going to have to look at, is this going to move the needle, if that hire is going to help us, or if it's just going to hurt us further in the hole. So that's a difficult.
But if we're only getting paid for 215 teachers and we're so much over,
Well,
that's what's really hurting
and
us.
what's
Yes, enrollment hurts, but
Yeah.
what's scary too
Well,
is,
the enrollment's driving that number.
right.
well, and it's not just the teachers now, it's our classified staff as well.
Mhm.
I mean,
Exactly.
221 on there. Bill, what did you say the percentage was of district?
Well, everything that I had from Jessica's presentation was 27% of the
Yeah,
budget.
27% is classified. That used to, I mean, that number skyrocketed.
Were you factoring in transportation into
Yeah,
that?
put all of it.
Okay,
everything
so
together.
transportation I
Yeah.
wouldn't necessarily factor in because we do get
No, I
its own
had them in
revenue.
a different pot.
Okay.
Transportation was 4%.
I mean, I love our classified staff. I don't want anybody, I mean.
No, that's not what I was saying either.
Yeah, it's just, but I think, I mean, I think we're overextended on both. certified and
I look at it from the standpoint of, to use one of the buzzwords nowadays, we're kind of at a point where we have to do a reset.
Mm-hmm.
Because of the fact that we're pretty drastically overstaffed. We've got some other issues to corral and rope in budget-wise. But it's going to take, at this point in time, a different thought process going forward into next year to make us come out on top at the end of next year.
Yeah. Okay, thank you, sorry.
That's okay. Jessica's done an enrollment projection. She's showing a 5-year downward trend, and we're already, like, next year is year 3, and that I don't know that she counted the 2 years previous, but
I did.
over the, so last, 2 years ago, we went down 100, then 100. And if everything stays the same this year, no new kids, nobody leaves, our enrollment will be down 124 this fall, because we're graduating larger senior classes and we're bringing tiny baby kindergarten classes in.
So the freeze on hiring, unless it's affecting enrollment or, something does that mean all 4 spots, admin, instructional people, classified, are all gonna be underneath that?
I wouldn't say it's a freeze necessarily. It's just looking at it and really truly looking at can we do without that position. So if we choose to not replace, if the board decides that we're not going to replace the open vacant positions that we have, and we're able to kind of backfill that without having to do those hires, that would save about $1 million next year with those positions.
Right.
So looking at, do we really need to hire? The only caveat to that is if a kid comes to this district and they require a one-on-one, we have to hire a one-on-one.
No, I get that part. I just
But
mean
you also, it was a lot of discussion, and we talked about, okay, not refilling, everybody can argue why they need that position refilled, that's and
Yes, 21.
so,
Yeah.
well, we're gonna tighten up here, and
we
then
have to.
it's not gonna look good if all of a sudden there was like a new district office employee hired.
They're not hiring.
won't be.
No. Yeah,
It's not gonna look very good.
No, we're not doing
It
that.
will be a really difficult conversation for us to have with our.
And we've had some, if you look at the district office, just in the finance team, we've had turnover in the finance department. So all of us are relatively low on the schedule comparatively. So there was some salary savings this year based on basically 3 kind of relatively new people into the district in these positions. So there is some savings.
But they're not new positions.
But they're not new positions.
Yeah, they're the positions.
And this is more of a political, big picture question, but how many other districts are suffering in the same sort of boat that we are?
Pretty much the entire state of Idaho.
So why is our legislative body
Thank you for that question.
ignoring
That's what I said.
all of the school districts?
Bill, that's what I said in the budget workshop I said our fight isn't even,
Well, because they
isn't
put
even
out in the
amongst
press
the
that here's
IBB.
this big huge chunk of money. But what they hide is they took all of these chunks of money to create this.
Yes.
That's right. That's
So there was
So
a
like,
really
here's
good,
the money we're gonna steal from you to create this press release.
There was a really good op-ed. It was
There
an
was.
opinion. It was
There was
so
something there.
good. It was so good because she basically was like, "Hey, yeah, they're giving us new money, but it's not really new money. It's property tax relief, so it's not new money, and we're still failing at funding our schools." There was a great piece.
She actually said it's not, it doesn't fall on the political line, it's just, we need to do better supporting our schools.
Mm-hmm. And the state's losing superintendents because they don't want to go out for levies every couple years. They don't.
And our levy next year is going to be challenging because of House Bill 292, where the governor is saying
Explain it.
you're gonna get money to maintain your buildings, but you don't actually get the money to maintain your buildings if you have levies or bonds on the books, because it becomes a tax relief bill first. So we're not gonna get that money, and we can't put on the ballot that we're gonna, hopefully the board will run the supplemental levy next year. They have to make that decision. And hopefully we're running it for the same amount, but they have to make that decision. And we cannot put on the ballot that it's 9.52 million, but you have $3.3 million in tax relief because we have the 1.7 from last year and the 1.6 new this year. We have to show 9.52, and this is what it's going to cost per $1,000 of value, taxable value of your house. So all of our messaging's going to say you're actually only footing the bill for 6 million, 6.2.
But the ballot language can't show that.
And so then they're going to go to the ballot and say they lied. They said 6.2 and they've got 9.5.
So that's
that is going to be very problematic for us.
the way the statute
Running
reads. The only way that we can include that property tax relief money on the ballot is if it's guaranteed funds. The state doesn't guarantee what they're going to give us because it's based on our salary it's based on different factors, and so they can't guarantee what dollar amount they're gonna give us until well after the election. So although we can advertise and say this is what your ballot will look like, but we want you to know that this is what the true impact is gonna be, we cannot put that on the ballot.
So there just are a lot of things in our path that are gonna be challenging, that it's gonna take all of us together to work through. But I don't anticipate that this is gonna be the last year that we have to talk about not filling vacant positions, because in order for us to take advantage of the money that's coming to us for the staff that we have to get closer to the number of staff the state is paying for. Because right now, we're getting $48,000 total, all stipends in for every one of you, 48,000. And when you look at, just think about how much you make individually, it's a lot more than $48,000. So, hate to be Debbie Downer.
Well, and that's the problem throughout the state as well. If you look at the averages of the average salaries across the state in every school district, they're not that amount. They're a lot higher.
Which is why people are talking about closing schools, going to 4-day, I mean.
They're not talking about it, they're doing it.
Right.
Yeah.
How's that come into question? I mean, I remember when Brian was here, we did a study in our long range about the 4 days. At that point, we found out through all the studies that it wasn't a real cost savings. I mean, if anything, maybe $500,000 a year,
Right.
maybe.
And that's if
I don't
you
know how
shut
that
all
transfers
your-
with all this inflation and everything
Right,
that's happening,
yeah.
because that was 10 years ago.
Right.
But
There's,
people are doing it to save money, so I don't.
except I don't think they are. Like Kellogg is not doing it to save money. Kellogg is doing it for mental health and stress and giving the kids one less day of school. Post Falls didn't do it to save money. They did it to try to keep their teachers. So everybody's doing it for a different reason. But really, to save money, you would have to completely shut down all of your buildings on that 5th day. Well, the way Post Falls is doing it is they're shut down on Friday, and she's told her ADs as much as possible, every home game is on a Thursday, Friday, or Saturday.
Yeah.
So their high school, at least, and probably their middle schools, are open on Friday because they're playing games. And then you've got practices on I don't know, on Fridays over the weekend. So you've got athletic things going on, and then if you're truly shutting down and nothing's happening, you're not doing any remediation for kids, you're not providing childcare for kids in the buildings, because that also costs money, then we are cutting our bus drivers' pay by 20%. They won't stay because they will lose their benefits.
Classified's the same.
They're all
no matter how you
working
look
for
at it,
benefits,
their
yes.
hours are gonna be cut.
Right.
At some point. It won't be huge, but it will be. I mean, you're talking 10 to 15 hours, probably a month.
Well, yeah, it depends
But
on.
ironically, if you talk about transportation, the savings really isn't ours, it's the state's savings. Because most of the transportation costs.
Yeah,
is
and then you get less
fares.
money because of that anyway. So they factor all of that stuff in. It's all relative.
Right, so yeah, pretty soon we
Yeah.
wouldn't even be able to offer transportation because we won't have bus drivers. So there's a lot of moving parts. The board's gonna look at the the community survey results on
But
Wednesday.
not for very long.
And it'll be interesting to see what they wanna do with that, because 60% of the 2,000 people who participated were in favor of.
60.
It's
But
a
it was a
60,
small
40.
amount of
Yeah, we
respondents.
mailed those surveys to 16,000 homes, and we had 2,000 people respond, so. 1/8. Anyway, we're way off.
Yeah, sorry. Let's get going.
Yep, so, but to your point, Jason, we can talk in IBB about some money things, but until the board makes a decision about where the cuts are coming from and what we're doing, because we have to have a balanced budget, it may be hard to do IBB and talk money until we know for sure what that looks
I
like.
think that's kind of what I was getting at, but.
Yeah.
There's
Because-
there's really, in my mind, at this juncture, and my mind could be changed, but you really only have two scenarios, and that is that we generate enough savings so we can balance the budget based on not filling the attrition positions.
And some other
there's no
things.
change in anybody's salary, period. I mean, that's a level. The other option is to try to find an additional $600,000 or $700,000 to pay so everybody can get a step. Beyond that, there isn't anything. There's just nowhere to go.
I mean, doing what Bob's talking about, that includes APE, like,
We
it's
just have to
whatever
freeze it.
everybody's getting this year in APE is what they get next year in APE, because that money, there isn't extra money that comes to us for that. So the 1.8 that we're looking for right now is balancing the budget, and then the 600,000 just to give all staff a step on their salary matrix, whatever one they're on, and that's it.
And I believe 8 at this year's numbers. So there wouldn't be an 8.5 if you're on 8.4, you would have 8.4 at this year's total.
That's a really tough sell.
That's not gonna go over.
Right,
But, I
well,
mean-
I don't know what else.
No, I
to
just
do.
mean, cause we originally, when we put this whole thing together, the idea was we put together this IPLP in order to have teachers, kind of prove that they're distinguished and worthy of the advanced professional level, and they were gonna get paid for that effort. And so now, I mean, are we gonna relieve them of that effort?
I feel like we kind of have, because there's not a lot that you're being asked to do on your IPLP anymore.
I feel like I still put quite a bit of time into that IPLP, so.
But you might be that, which is awesome, because you're
Distinguished
a
teacher.
distinguished teacher. But we're not asking for that anymore. We really limited what we're asking teachers to do. I agree. It's not where when we first started talking about it, it's not where we were looking to go. But our reality is, I mean, we're looking at a lot of money.
There are a couple of things there. I mean, obviously, even if your salary didn't increase going into next year, you're still getting paid for that effort in the past. The question is whether or not, the year 5 would flow. Well, the money flows to us, but it all flows into the same bucket, and then we have to redistribute it, accordingly. And so that really is a sticky issue to deal with. We understand from a teacher's point of view, I think, what your thought was when the process was started. But at least as long as I've been here, and I'll reiterate what I said before, Jason, and that is every year we talked about that year 5 may not be sustainable, and it has to come back into discussion at some point. And unfortunately, this is the point, I think.
Yeah, but even in addition to that 8.5, the 1.8 that we're looking for just to get the steps for everybody doesn't include 8.4 actually goes up a little bit
A lot of it.
this next year, and
Yeah,
we're
'cause
saying
they keep increasing.
yeah, this is the last year. They'll finally have it all. It was a 5-year rollout for the last rung of that career ladder, so they're done. But we're not passing through the difference between because we can't. So that's the part that's challenging, and it's do we give everybody a step, which I think is really important because we've frozen people on the salary schedule before and that didn't work out very well. Or do you just give the people who are on 8 their money? But we can't do both because we don't have the money unless we cut even deeper. But I don't know how to do that and not have really big elementary classes. That's the other part for the secondary people on this team is when you're looking at making cuts to big, organization with a large, budget. It's not as easy to cut at the high school level as it is at the elementary level, because you have to have certain courses in
Right,
order
course of study.
for the kids to get the credits they need to graduate. And there are a lot of moving parts in a master schedule. It's a lot easier to look at class sizes at the elementary and say, okay, we can go from 20 to 25 in the classroom and cut positions. So there's a delicate dance with regard to what, I mean, even with the 12 positions that we're recommending we not fill, we have 3 elementary classrooms that if everybody who's there now comes back next year, we're not staffed for. Which means we have to look at, maybe we don't have the ALP program next year, and those ALP teachers have to go back into a classroom to cover those classes, because we can't have first grade classes of 31. So that's the other part of this, is to get more money, we have to cut deeper, and we're already so deep that we're gonna have to get very creative in covering the classrooms that we need to cover.
And it gets bigger at that, we're only, right now it's we're down 125, if we're down more, it's even worse.
Or,
I guess I just keep saying it, but wouldn't you agree that if we didn't do the APE funds, and if we didn't have distinguished teachers, all of the teachers that are distinguished right now would be on a P5, which is less, so you'd still be in the same boat at a P5, because then that would bring your salary-based apportionment down.
I think you'd
which
still,
means you wouldn't be paying the 48,000 for the state that it's giving you, you'd be paying 41,000 or 40,000 because of the.
I think
I
people
mean,
who
to
are
me, it's all relative.
but people
But we
who are
wouldn't-
distinguished are distinguished. So whether you're putting the artifacts into your IPLP or the principal is, we'd still be getting that it's the third rung on the career ladder. When they first rolled out the career ladder, they intended for it to be 3 rungs, and they didn't have enough money initially, so it was residency and proficient or professional. Then they added the distinguished side of that. It's the 3rd rung of that. So we would get the money, because we have distinguished teachers. The intention was to get the money to the teacher. I just don't know how to continue to do that.
You know, we understand that, you know, we've had a lot of discussion about in the past. The board has always, I think, kind of taken the position, if we can let it flow through, let it flow through. And we've managed to do that up to this point, but once again, I think we've reached a point of reset, because there's just no fiscal way to make that all work going forward. You know, there's going to be pain, and please understand, the board is not any more happy about this than any one of you folks are, perhaps less in some respects, because we have to deal with political ramifications as well. But you know, we just have to do what we have to do in order to balance the budget and keep the operation going and do the very best we can for kids. And that's the bottom line. Whatever we have to do, it has to be the best thing that we can do for kids, given what we have to work with.
Just to make sure I understand, Jessica, you said our 1.1 would go to 1.8, roughly $700,000 for a 2% increase.
not a 2% increase, it's just to move everybody.
But
up.
there's 2%
It
of some
depends,
sellers.
well,
It depends
for,
on the
it
salary
just depends on the
schedule.
Right.
schedule. So
Yeah.
classified's a little bit different, admins are different. For
A
instructional
step down.
staff, it's 2%. So a step down for everybody who is on a salary matrix would bring up that deficit.
1% would be basically $350K.
If we did a half step, that would be really,
No, he's just saying
Just-
1%
Just trying
across.
to get a general idea of what 1% is.
Well, it's hard to do, cause I don't know that our classified salary schedule has a 2%
It doesn't.
bump down.
It's not straight across like that.
No, when we redid the certified salary schedule last year, we did put that 2% between each cell. And so with that, just in the classified on the base, I think you're looking at 365,000, something like that. And then if we add additional money, and that's just, that's on the certified, that's just on the base. And then as far as the other ones, Jess had the calculation of that, but yeah, the classified is not a 2% step, it's less than that.
Okay.
And I think the administrators are less than 2 also.
Yeah, to do the cell movement on the administrators, it was only gonna be $32,000. Just trying to find my number for classified. So, it's 1.9% for class. Yeah, it's about 1.9%. It's a little bit less than 2%. For classified, and that's on an average. It really varies. Some it's 1.83 for a step, some it's 1.96. So it's just an average. It averages out to 1.9%.
Okay. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
So, do we want to just finish the negotiated agreement and wait until the board makes some decisions about how much money what that reset's gonna look like and how much money they're gonna ask us to try to salvage? Because then we'll have a better idea of what we have to talk about. At this point, we don't know until the board makes decisions.
I'm concerned about the timing.
Well, isn't the board meeting?
Wednesday.
Well, you're gonna write your budget, and then, you just.
What I publish in the paper is what I have to present.
But you never publish salaries and benefits, I mean, as
It's
far
part
as.
of the budget.
But we've never ratified it early.
No.
We always ratify, we've ratified in the middle, people don't ratify until the middle of
June.
summer
Okay.
sometimes, so.
Yep.
I think you go off of the estimated numbers which you have in that scattergram there.
Forwarded to the spreadsheet on placement.
I could be wrong, Jessica, I don't know your job, but I do know as far as past negotiations, we've never had to do negotiated topics to the paper.
Okay, so this is, okay, I wasn't
Are
sure.
we switching gears yet?
First, yep, okay. So the first thing we needed to come back to was we had this initial placement table for salaries and benefits. And when Brooke started looking at this, she was very concerned because it became apparent to her that really quickly new people are going to leapfrog over some of our people who've been in the district for 7 or 8 years. And so she has a couple to consider, I guess. So do you want to talk about,
Yeah, I
you
mean,
want to manage
well,
those?
sure. So based off of placement, you guys can see that we have 68 people here. And then when we initially placed them last year, these are the people that are, these people here are the people, this was the years of experience that they had last year that were placed in that step 1. So we have mostly people that had 1 or 2 years of experience, because if you guys remember, that step 1 took such a major increase that we would have, it would have gone way over the top as far as percentage wise. So,
but we do have some who had 5 years, one that had 7, there's some 4s in there.
yeah, and
But
so
a lot of those, we were just looking at that too, those, in the people in that first step, it would have took on our old salary schedule 10 years to make that.
Exactly, right. And so I know we're not probably gonna do a whole lot of hiring, but of course we have to plan ahead for placement on how we're gonna place people. We had talked about this one, 0 to 1, that they would go there. I just feel like if we did something like that, I don't want them to go over our current veteran, our current staff. So this was, I brainstormed this idea a little bit. Maybe if they have 0 to 3, then they would go to the step 1. And then just going down. I'm open to other suggestions. My whole thing was I just want to be able to honor our current staff.
100%.
So quick question, just on the top end there, the 16 plus years of experience, self-placement, 12 to 59,000, that grouping there.
Right here. Yeah.
Our teachers that went into that cell, on average, what was their year of experience?
That went into that 12. I would have
Does
to.
that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay.
I would have to probably.
And we've never given 16 years of experience. We've only given 12, and they could be placed on the 13th.
Right.
So I don't. That's probably another. I wouldn't recommend giving that many years
Going
of
out
experience
that
because
far.
for sure they would be going over the top of our people.
And
Yeah.
what are we required to do by the state? Is there any requirements on this in statute?
Required to do anything by the state.
I just want to make sure there wasn't a statute.
No.
Seem to have a lot of statutes.
So you want to know how many people that had 16 plus years of experience. And
Well, just our own people that were going into that step, that are in that step 12 this year, the
She's
59,000.
just
where are
wondering
they
how
coming
many
from?
years did they have to get into that? Were they at 18, step 18? Where were they? to
Right,
get
so I'm
to?
gonna do 6. So
I know that's a really hard question. I didn't. It's not
no,
what I
that's okay.
expected.
While she's doing that, when you look at like our 23-24, there's 89 staff members in the first 2 cells, which is what's driving, some of what's driving down our weighted average.
So it looks like I had seven people that ended up that were placed in that step 16 and their years of experience.
So we're looking at step 12.
Oh,
on the
step
new- on the
12.
new
Okay,
set.
sorry. Step
Sorry, Brooke.
Okay, so I had just a handful of people that went in there. Let me see. I had 6 people that went into that step 12, and their experience ranged between they were on the step 9 up to step 14.
Okay.
And again, I mean, we don't need to go, like I said, we were only, on our old salary schedule, we only gave up to 12 years of experience. Maybe that's what we do on this one as well.
So if they have 12 years of experience, they would go into step 13.
No, I
Because
would
that's what
say,
they've done in the past. They get 12 years, which means they start with us on 13.
I know, but then,
They're great.
yeah, we have them with here, they would be on step 8.
I mean, sorry, you're right. I'm
Yeah.
looking at you're right. 13 years of experience would be the 9th cell. I mean, 12 years of experience, they would get placed on for 13.
We have them on step 8.
They go on step 9.
No, that's how, but on this one, we placed them, if they had 12 years of experience, they'd be 8. Or if they had, yes, if they have 12 years of experience, we'd place them on, well, that experience column is right there. So if they have 12 years of experience, they go on step 8.
Okay, so in the past, when they had 12 years of experience, we always placed them on step 13.
Right, but we're trying,
We're not doing that, is
no,
what you're saying.
yes.
Okay, I just want to clarify,
Yeah.
because that's different than what we have
Exactly.
done.
Well, and they would be eligible for the BA plus 24 and the master's stipend, in addition to that dollar amount, the 54,000. If we
Right.
cut it off at the 8th and 4,539, they could still get 3,200 in master's stipend, so, right? As an
If that's
addition.
what you guys negotiate and, you know, they
Yeah,
have
cause that's
their
just
masters.
self-placement,
Yeah.
if they've earned a master's, they should get to pay for it, I mean, is that?
So they still get those other little,
If that's our current.
yeah,
Right, if we freeze everything at where it is, then that's current.
yeah.
So is everybody okay with that on the left as being the initial placement? Are we concerned at all that we're gonna struggle maybe to compete with Coeur d'Alene and Post Falls if we're saying you have 7 years of experience, you're going on our 3rd cell? I don't know what Coeur d'Alene and Post Falls give as far as
Honestly,
years.
for this year, I don't think we're gonna have a whole lot of competition with the other school districts.
Nobody's hiring.
So, I mean, we can, you know, work with this year, I don't know, and see what we're looking like again next year, but I don't know if you guys all agree, we're probably not gonna be placing a lot of new people this year. I just need something because I can't go back to, you know, a salary schedule that's 2 years old and try to place them as if they were employed with us, you know, 2
To me,
years
this
ago.
honors our people that are already here, and I think that
I'm
needs to be
hoping
our
so.
priority, whether, I mean, I think Post Falls and Coeur d'Alene have to be secondary in that, just because, I don't know. That's my opinion.
I agree.
I suppose if it becomes problematic and we're not getting hires
Yeah.
because they're not wanting, they know somewhere else to
Get
get
offered in
more,
both places and everybody's going there.
then we can bring it back next year and talk about it if it becomes problematic, but.
Okay.
Coeur d'Alene does a maximum of 10 years.
And what's the
first,
dollar amount, do you know?
There's their salaries.
Yeah.
Their salary schedule's different than ours, because they have columns.
Yeah, their salary schedule is like our older one, they don't have a single column.
So they said 10 years at a step 10, and that's different depending on where you're at.
So
What's-
with just a BA, nothing else,
63,000.
it's 63,000,
So that's 11,000 difference.
and that was my concern.
Plus they pay more health insurance coverage.
So, yeah, so I agree with you, I wanna honor our staff, I just don't want to not get the best candidates because they can make $11,000 more.
Well, I know I'd be upset if I had 10 years of experience and somebody came from Post Falls that had 10 years of experience and made more money than I did on the salary schedule. I mean, I don't know, I don't think that's good for morale or business or anything, but I
And we knew,
understand the
and we knew
recruitment
this
part.
was gonna be a little bit of a problem for a while until people start moving. But I mean, that's just the nature of going from the huge salary schedule we used to have to a single
Now,
column.
what you also have to look at that is they probably have 8 funds included in that salary schedule, so if you include the 8 funds in there, if a person has 8, and that could be the argument for them, is, well, if you have 8 and you're on year 7, you can add another, you know, $7,400 to that. Oh, and by the way, you're a BA 24, so add another $550 to that, you know what I'm saying? And so it's a little more manageable.
Right, but on that Coeur d'Alene salary schedule, if they're a BA 24, they're getting more money than the 63.
Yeah.
So, so I think, I don't know, I'm okay with
Try it out.
trying it out and just seeing, I mean, this is a good year actually to try it out because I think the people who are out there looking for a job are gonna struggle to find a place where people have openings because
And they go up to health
everybody's
cares.
cutting.
They don't.
So this might be a good year to try it out. Let's see.
I just wanted to send a message to our veteran people especially, I mean, look, we have 68 of them in that, you know, that stuff right there. That's a lot. I mean, I know they all got big increases from what they were on the previous salary schedule that they did, but I don't know.
I agree with you, Brooke. I mean, and we have some great kids that are at the high schools right now, or at U of I, or ISU, or LCSC, that are graduating in education programs as we speak. And it's okay to try a new teacher. Bob hired me. I'm still here 30 years later. We can get people that are dedicated to our district. I don't know if you remember that.
Oh, yeah.
There was 2 of us though, so you might remember.
We got 2 for 1. Almost.
That's right.
Okay, so,
I mean, if you go with our why, it's to recruit and retain, right? So that's the only one that it actually doesn't fall off. But if you put it to our standards, is it legal? Yes. Is it ratifiable? Yes. Does it positively impact students? Yes.
well, it might not help us recruit, but it might help us retain.
But it'll help us retain because it's better for morale, I would think. Yeah, so I mean, there's really nothing in our standards that goes against it.
Okay, do we want to vote?
I'm at a disadvantage. I'm in a different room down here.
Can you not hear us?
I can hear all that conversation, so I'm not sure exactly what you're doing.
So in the negotiated agreement, we've got this initial placement, because last year when we placed people, we placed them, we moved them on our old salary schedule to figure out what they would make there, and then had to move them over to a cell that kind of matched. But now we have this just single column, and what we're running into is somebody who comes to our district with 10 years of experience on this would go into cell 6. But we have people, bless you, in cell 1 who had 10 years of experience who are in cell 1, our people. So we're trying to make sure that new people aren't leapfrogging over our people with regard to experience. So we're just, Jason was going through the standards, and one of our issue is always to recruit and retain highly qualified teachers.
Right.
And so he said, the recruit part, maybe this hinders us a little bit, but it helps us to retain the people we have, and then it meets all the other standards that we is it fiscally conservative or responsible? Is it logistically feasible? Is it legal? Is it ratifiable? Those kinds of standards. So I think unless there's more discussion, I think we're ready to vote on whether we're okay with that initial placement. Do you have thoughts?
Let's see What is the change you're proposing?
Over in that.
Well,
This
Bob, Bob, we really don't have a process. This was kind of forgotten last year.
This is what we talked about in one of the first times we met, but even this we were feeling didn't quite work. So Brooke reworked it, and she's recommending that one.
Well, why didn't you say that? So this is placement coming in.
Mm-hmm. That doesn't mean that they sit on that cell for 3 years before they move to the next one. That's just initial placement, and then once you're placed,
So
then
that
you
if-
move.
If I've got 4 years experience, I come in on this cell,
Correct.
but the next year I would move there, assuming we don't have a year like this.
Correct.
You got that?
Anybody else?
Thank you.
Are we ready to vote on that? So thumbs up means you're good, sideways want to talk more, and down is you don't like that idea. Thumbs up. Okay. All right, so Brooke.
Did Mark vote?
He did not.
Okay. Can you copy and paste that in there?
You want this back?
And just for clarification, you went down to 16 plus, but we don't give that many years.
Yeah, do we
Right.
stop it at 12?
Yeah.
Do I just copy and paste to 12?
Yeah, that'd be great.
what's the best way to do this? What's this? I don't wanna move the table. Let's
Insert
do
the
this.
Yeah.
What am I doing? Can I
would
just paste it?
I would just highlight the whole thing and paste it, yeah. And you just dump the other two.
Okay.
Thank you. This will make my life a little bit easier.
So for this year, you really went back to like our old salary schedule.
Placed
But
them as
then-
if they were employed with us, and then did the target increase that we were looking for, like I did with all the other staff. So yeah, this will make such a challenge.
Okay, the above provisions apply to teachers transferring in with 1 or more years of acceptable teaching experience. And this is based on law site Idaho code. Is this the law that identifies what acceptable teaching experience is?
I
that
can't
we're gonna-
find it. I've been looking for that, and you found it for me at one time.
Okay, well, we'll keep looking.
Okay.
Do we need this graduate credit? Because we don't do, oh, no, we already did that, just for
Yeah,
the
all
master's
these
stipend.
we've taken care of.
There was one thing that Kim Suko emailed me that she wanted to make sure we adjusted. I think we
I'm glad
did.
she was trying to explain it to me and I could not understand what she was saying, so I'm glad she emailed you.
Yeah, it was super easy. They get paid $3 per kid per class instead of just, it says $3 per
That's,
student.
I knew how they were getting paid, I just,
Yeah.
she was,
So she asked me if I could make sure I change that, so I just need to find it.
it's in the dual credit.
Yeah, which is down here somewhere. There it is. $3 per student per course.
And what was the confusion?
It was,
That's how we're being paid. That's how they're being paid. This per course wasn't in there, so it was $3 per student.
Oh, yeah.
So you could have a student who's enrolled in
Yeah, 2 or
3 different courses each semester, and they were only getting paid $3 instead of the 9.
and
It's
this
not-
is how they've been getting paid, it's just
Mhm.
cleaning up the language.
Yeah.
To make sure it's, all the Ts are crossed and the
Right,
Is are
yep,
dotted.
yep, the language doesn't match the practice, so.
Yep.
If everybody's okay with that, thumbs up. Okay.
Thank you, Kim Suko.
Yes.
Yeah, she came to
That's
the
a
last
good
meeting and
catch.
was
Yeah.
listening in, and
That's
so
good.
she was, yeah.
Yep, I can get rid of that, cause that's done. This isn't part of the IBB, but just so everybody's aware, the counselors had been getting an additional stipend, because they were assisting with, dual credit private school kids who couldn't access advanced opportunities unless they were enrolled in a public school, so they were dual enrolling. So they could go to NIC and take the classes, but the state changed the law this year, so they each get $2,500 to put toward advanced opportunities. And Jessica did some work on our behalf, and the amount of money that we were paying in stipends for the counselors, and then some additional time for registrars cost us more than what we were getting in additional ADA, so we are discontinuing that practice next year. But our Lakeland High School friends are going to continue 1 more year without getting paid the stipend to get their this year's juniors through their senior year, but they won't bring anybody new on, so that is a change. Is there anything else, Jason, that we did not get done?
I thought we went through the whole
I
thing.
think there were a couple of things that like Brooke was gonna go back and check, maybe like I don't know, this last time.
Yeah, check on, we have it was,
I can't remember.
one, it's the law on the 7 months of continuous teaching, and any single year is required to count as a year of experience.
Right, yeah,
That's one I can't find.
okay.
And so, I may need to reach out to the state. Jessica's looking at for it too.
Okay.
Lisa, I thought, found it for me at one point in time.
I did.
I think it was last year we talked about this and you found it. We said, it's right here, Brooke.
So there's.
Yeah.
Oh, we did need to come back to this. So the last time we met, we talked about when, for elementary prep time, when will the specialists start and end, and so,
I followed up with Chad, and we spoke to a few librarians, and they felt like it was feasible that library and tech could start the second week, with the idea that at the elementary level, all the Chromebooks, part of that checkout to get that in teachers' hands would happen that first week, because there was some discrepancy between the buildings. So the first week is getting tech in hand, and then everybody, library and tech will start that second week. So everyone else can start the first week.
What about middle school? Same?
You only asked me to talk to elementary and talk to middle school.
We asked to get the Chromebooks earlier in middle school, because right now some of us aren't getting them until actually like the third full week.
Oh, Chad said he felt like it was reasonable for everybody to get Chromebooks.
Mhm.
Okay.
Yeah.
So
Sorry.
are you okay if we put that, classified specialists at the elementary level will start the second week of school. Certified specialists at the elementary level will start the first week of school.
Yeah.
Yes.
No.
Do we need to address the ending times at the end of the year? Because that was in the initial highlighted material. Will it be the same, like a week early for classified, but certified goes until the last day of school, or? I'm just, because it said started, and I don't know, I'm not elementary, so but I'm guessing that that might be on the tail end as well, an issue.
I can't remember. I don't know if
When I asked Chad about the end of the school year, his issue is it's just, if they go up to the last minute, if there's any damages, they have no way of retrieving that because families are gone. So I feel like his hope would be that we would at least that we would start that last week getting, but I didn't confirm that with him. I can shoot him an email.
So they would end the week
Prior to the last week of school.
prior to the last week of school.
The Friday prior to the last school day, the week before the last week of school, because I don't want them to think that they get 2 weeks off.
The
Friday before.
Before Memorial.
Well, it just depends on how the calendar
Yeah.
works.
Yeah.
So we'll end the last day of the week prior to the last
Finally.
week of school.
Yeah.
Okay, and certified
They go all the
specialist
way.
instructors will begin classes the first day of school and end on the last day.
Yep.
Okay.
I did talk with Carrie Murphy about the rollout of the Chromebooks, and she says it's generally, the problem isn't generally that tech can't get the Chromebooks out earlier. She said the biggest problem is the student accountability piece as far as paying for the insurance. So she said that's what's been hard, is making sure, because if you give everybody, if a kid takes a Chromebook, that has to be insured. And so it's a matter of getting the word out to parents to make sure when that Chromebook is gonna be there so that they'll have the money. And then what do you do if the kid doesn't have,
Right.
you can't give them a Chromebook, or can you and just have them leave it in the classroom?
Yeah, well, they get to choose whether they're gonna pay for the insurance or not. since we're doing registration in May instead of August, maybe that will help with that.
That's kind of what I was hoping, and maybe we can just remind them to, I don't know, tell them about the insurance and then the computers are gonna go out.
How much is the insurance now? Is it still
It's
20?
20.
It's still 20.
Yeah, and at the elementary level, they only pay that one time for
Okay,
the
just
6
curious.
years
'Cause they
because
don't
they
go
don't
home.
they don't go home and they don't use it as often.
Okay.
At the secondary level, I think it's $20 each year.
So that would be another question. Could you do the insurance, so like the kid could still take a Chromebook if he was in middle school or high school, but he just cannot take it home, and so there'd have to be some management
You'd have to
issue
use
there.
just what's in class.
Right,
Mhm.
but could we still offer that as an option, or they still have a Chromebook be able to get? Because right now the way it is if they don't pay it or have that proof, they can't get a Chromebook at all.
And I don't know, some schools they do the Chromebook insurance form hard copy, and other schools are doing it as part of the registration portal. And I don't know if it's a required form in the portal.
Okay.
And the
So-
question would be would it be they're checking out a Chromebook for that class and they return at the end of that period, or would it be a
That's what
checkout
I
for the
say.
day?
I
So
would
you'd
say
have to
stay in the
have,
classroom.
you have to have enough in each classroom
Yeah.
for just a little bit of overflow, cause otherwise if they get it for the whole day, you won't probably,
Right.
Yeah, I don't know what's feasible there.
yeah.
Okay, well, maybe we can work on that.
I just make the kids do all the work handwritten. And say, good incentive to get your parent to take care of that. Make sure you have
Well,
notebook paper
yeah,
tomorrow.
but that
Writing.
it gets hard though when you start.
Sorry, I'm mean.
But there's so many, at the beginning of the year for middle school and elementary especially, there's so many entry tests that they have to do.
I know.
Those are all
And
but I'm the same way, get out a piece of paper.
And then you are selective on certain things, the things that where it has to be digital, and it is, but when it could be either, then you're choosing either, so that, you know, the non-technology.
yeah, in my simple mind, it made sense to me that we could just take the Chromebooks that the kids already have, we have enough for everybody, and put them in Chromebook carts and just have them in the classrooms, and so if they need them, they pull them out, if they don't, they leave them. But Chad had to explain to me a couple of times, especially at the high school level, that we have teachers who don't have, well, you've got
Prep period.
teachers on prep, and so you actually need like
Yeah, a class of 30 and a class
Plus
of
the kids take them
15.
home for homework. I mean,
67% more than what you actually have to be able to do that. And I kept saying, that doesn't mathematically make sense to me. It makes my brain hurt, but because that would be ideal, is every teacher has a Chromebook cart and the kids just use them on the days they need them, and then check them out if they need to take them home, but it's not feasible. Okay, I think we made it all the way through this. I think that it's all done. Right now, the board has scheduled the budget session, a special meeting for May 13th, but I think that that's probably going to end up getting changed to May 28th, unless there's a different date that the board comes up with, so that everybody can be there. Which means if that doesn't happen until the 28th, we can't meet until after that date. So as soon as, we'll know Wednesday when that's gonna be scheduled, and then we can get our next IBBs on the calendar.
Okay.
And then in the meantime, if you guys have any great brainstorms, Jessica is definitely open to ideas on ways to mitigate some of this budget stuff.
We also offered this morning, I'd be happy to come talk with any group about how salary-based apportionment is calculated. I think that's a conversation that
I'm actually going through how to explain it to Mr. Kluss so I can make him do it.
Okay. Well, like I said, I'd be happy to walk through it with anybody. I can come up.
If you use that one document that has the little print in
So
it.
this first one, is instructional.
Yep, and then pupil services.
This one is pupil
I'll
services.
share out the one that the PowerPoint that I did for you guys tonight as
No,
well, because
that's
it gives
fine.
more contextual
He
information.
likes it when it's in my brain.
Okay.
Because he can understand my brain slightly. Because
Oh my
I
gosh, that's
figure
scary.
stuff out. So I have to be able to explain it to him in our brains. Work well.
Okay,
So we're gonna have, I mean, I'm just trying to think the end of the year, if we're not even gonna start talking until the end of May. School's out the second week of June.
we have Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday night that week of graduations, so we can't do anything in the evening until Thursday, the last week of school. But we could, if they're gonna meet on the 28th, we could potentially schedule IBB for the 29th of May. We just need to wait until we know when the board's gonna schedule it.
Can I ask an insurance question?
Maybe.
What kind of insurance?
Well,
Medical benefits.
just clarification. When we add costs to the district, what are we paying for? Like, what is the district
District is going to be paying the $825.
for us?
Yeah.
Okay.
It's just $825.
So like if we increase $470 something, that is the increased cost to you guys for the $825 worth of coverage.
825 is just what the district is.
It's
The
a flat
district's
amount.
portion is just the flat portion.
So if, for example, you're only using $600 of the $825
Yeah.
this year, and medical insurance goes up to where you're gonna use $700 of the $800, you would still just use $700 of the $825. If
Right.
for some reason your elections are over the $825, you're paying the difference between the two. So it's just that flat $825 per benefited employee.
So the 7.7% that the insurance company that's going up will be really a 7.7 payment for the employee
That's,
if you're above
yes.
825.
Yes,
Yeah.
correct.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's not, you're right.
Which isn't what we wanted to do.
No.
No, and I will tell you, I did look at, because like last year, for example, Lisa and I both, we are, we have the buy-up plan, we have, the Willamette, we have the vision, and that 825 covered it all. I figured mine out, and I'm probably gonna have to pay an additional $24 with that increase.
So, yeah, so if you get the buy-up, it may cost the employee a little bit.
A little bit, yes. And that's with all three programs that I have right there. It would be about an additional $24.
Yeah, and how much was the 7.7 total cost to the district? Was that 450,000?
Well, it's not
Increase.
necessarily to the district.
No, if the district, because typically the district, we cover the increase.
So then we
cost.
would have to increase our 825, to cover that, and then the 420.
Then we would have to come up with another 400.
That's what I'm asking. So that's the question I'm asking you.
Yes.
So that's, is it
So you would have-
That's
400?
why I wanted to clarify.
Is it 450 or 400? Is that?
The first numbers.
So that
So
would
it goes up to
increase the
2.2 million instead of.
The insurance?
It
What are you
increase the
asking?
monthly
And
amount.
what's the,
to have.
like if the district were to cover it, I think it was
Then we would have to pay.
450,000.
No, it's 470.
I don't have to
That's the
look.
number
Oh,
that sticks
Jason's
out in
got
my
it.
head too.
478,983, so almost $479,000.
Yeah, so close to 500. So you're going from 1.8 to almost 2.3. if you
And that's
try to
if
cover
everybody
it.
elects exactly the same.
Yeah.
Right.
So if you're on the buy-up plan and you choose to go to the plan below that, potentially there's some savings there.
Yeah. Okay. All right. 7:28, and we're going to